Welcome. I'm Meredith. This is the Oasis Spiritual Empowerment Tarot, all about tarot, oracle, and empowering you. And today's video is for Jessica. I'm not going to say their last name just in case, but they wanted to see a video on how I trim and edge my decks. So I have two decks that I've been meaning to trim and edge. So the first is Sacred India Tarot, and this is by Rohit Arya and Jane Addams. So this deck, love this deck. I hate these borders. Hate them. They gotta go. Now, the tricky thing about it is that I love the backs. And as you can see, it's going to be tight, right? Am I going to lose part of that? I might, but I'm willing to do it to get rid of those borders. Now, this is a very glossy cardstock. It's going to be much more forgiving when it comes to edging. The second deck is Woodland Wardens. And this deck, I don't hate the borders, but I think they're going to be much nicer without them. This will be fine. I'm not really going to lose anything. You know, might trim off a bit of this, but, you know, I don't care about that. The tricky thing with this is that this cardstock is much more papery, so it's going to be less forgiving in terms of edging. And also, I don't know if I want to keep this brown border or not. If I do, it's going to be trickier to trim it. So we'll see how it goes. I might just get rid of it. So, I'm not going to obviously show you every single card trimming. That would be so boring. So instead, I'm going to show you how I trim a couple from each, and then we'll get into the edging. Now, I want to say, you see the scissors, right? That's how we're going to do this. So if you're looking for a way to have just a super precise, looks like it came right from the publisher like this is probably not that video. I will link. It used to be Boho Tarot. Now I think it's Dawn Michelle. She is super precise. Generally with trimming, she'll use like a guillotine paper cutter and measure it out, and it's very precise. It looks very professional. That's not how I do it. For a couple of reasons. One, I just can't be bothered, honestly. Which is funny because my method probably takes longer. But the way I do it, I feel like it's much more bonding with the deck, and it gives me a little more freedom. And I think they end up pretty precise. You know, again, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect for me. I kind of like that it feels a bit more made by me, you know. So I like the imperfections that may come, but that's not for everybody, and you know, I totally get that. So I just want to put that out there. Again, I'll link her channel if you haven't seen it. If you're here, I feel like you've seen her channel, but maybe not. So yeah, so if you want a really precise way to do it, she'll show it to you. So now that I've put that out there, we're just going to get right in, and I'm going to get to trimming. So basically, the key is, remember, you can always trim more. So I definitely err on giving it, you know, a bit of a wider kind of berth. And the other key is you want to make as few actual cuts as possible because it just makes it smoother. So I open the scissors up as far as I can, and then I just kind of go. Now, one of the nice things about these edges is you can use these to test your medium for edging, or how you want to edge it, or just to look at the colors. So, I mean, that's one use for those edges. Oh, so we're like right there, which is okay. Because for me, you know, as much as I love a great back, the reality is I spend a lot more time looking at the fronts. So, now these are fabric scissors, which of course, you know, now I need new fabric scissors because this isn't fabric, but you know, they're pretty sharp, pretty good. So, the other thing that I will use, but not yet, is a corner rounder. I got this from Amazon. I feel like it was under $10. I'll link it in the description. If you don't have one, if you would like one, it's fabulous. I use this for so many things. I even use this like I'll use my business card. You can buy them rounded. I just don't for this. But like, what you can do is there's three. There's a small, a medium, and a large. So you can kind of test it out on different paper, right? And kind of say, it's nice. I feel like the pointy corners work better for these cards. I don't know why. But my cards for the Oasis are rounded from the printer. But anyway, so you can kind of test them out. Like here, I'll show you. So that was the small. So the medium. And I've had this for a couple years, and it's been fabulous. So, I mean, that's a great investment. So you can kind of see the difference between the small and the medium. And then I have a third card. Let's do the large. Just to say, don't super love the way the large is on this, but I mean, it's for this. I tend to most often use medium for decks. It just seems to be the best one for most decks, but not all. So, to kind of show you the difference. All right, so this was the small. Should probably do it like that. So we have small, medium, and large. Now, if you get a different corner rounder, it may be a little bit different. But just to get an idea, see, I don't like that at all. But I like the medium. I like the small. I really prefer these with pointed, but it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to use that yet, though, because this first card I'm going to use for all the following cards to kind of measure up and make sure the size is where I want it to be. So yeah, now you can say on the back I have more of this than that. We may change that, we may not. Yeah, but right now we're going to leave it, and we're just going to go into the next card. So depending on the deck, sometimes the images are slightly different sizes. Like, even if you trim it exactly the same, you may notice that some cards will have extra white space, some cards don't. Generally, what I'll do in that case, it depends on the deck. I'll often trim the other cards to match the one so that I get rid of that white space. But it depends. I don't want to lose anything important. So it really depends on the deck. So now, yeah, so it looks like it's just kind of the way it's centered more than me. I mean, it could be me too. But so then once I have another one, I kind of lay them up against each other and line them up and see where there's a difference. So you can see, let's do it like this. It's very, very slight. Right? But it's there. There is a difference. So in this case, I'm going to trim a few more and kind of see, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to trim a little more to make them more precise. You know what? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Well, I guess I could fast forward. Do you want me to fast forward or pause? I'm going to pause it. And I'll come back when I have a few, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so now I'm back. Now, I wanted to show you. So right here, I don't know if you could tell. So I cut a little too far out down here. But this part's good. So what I do is I kind of use my scissors as a guide, and I press them like really hard to kind of get that straight line. And then the other thing I do is I feel the edges, feeling for like any bumps or anything, and then I'll smooth them out with the scissors like that. So now I have a few cards that have been trimmed, and what I do is you don't have to use the first card that you trimmed. You basically have to use the smallest card, right? Because you can't add to it. So you want to kind of line them up and see. So if we look, you can see that some are definitely taller than others. And I'll do the same thing for the sides. I don't know if it's not going to focus. But you see what I'm saying? So you want to line them up and find that smallest card. That's really the main thing. Which in this case, I think it might be this guy. But the first card was close. Right. So now I need to trim the others to match him. So what I'll do is I'll first take a look at the bottom. Now, these are kind of tricky because of the way the bottoms are. Like here with that, it's not a straight line, right? So I have to decide where I want to make that trim. So, like this guy has very little at that bottom. So in fact, you just kind of say, he still needs to be trimmed though. So he's going to definitely have to get trimmed at the top. So now first I do want to kind of check and make sure there's nothing kind of at the corners that stick out, because that can affect it. Like if the corner is going down a little bit on the edges, that'll make it seem like it's so much taller, and it's just that corner bit that needed to be trimmed. So I just line up the scissors and make sure if I go like a really straight cut, see it took a little bit, and then it took a little more, to make sure that it's very straight. So now that I've done that, before I trim anything else, I do want to check it and see. And actually, that might have done it. So, and we'll get to the sides in a minute, but first I just want to do that height. So now it's a little bit, so it's a little bit cockeyed. So this part's a little higher. This other card is a little higher on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that pressing up against to straighten out on this one first. And depending on the card backs and the fronts, sometimes it's easier than other times to do that. So now it's that back card that needs to be trimmed. And again, it's just that it's kind of slooping that way, and I can even feel it when I run my thumb. So we're just going to kind of and this is where it really takes time. And it just depends on you how much time you want to give it. I tend to kind of go back and forth with this a good bit, and it's just part of the process to me, and I'm okay with that. I think we need just a teensy bit more. And if you're really careful with how you line up the scissors, usually works well to not cut too much. And it does serve as like a straight line kind of thing. So now it's better. It's not super perfect, but it's really close, so I'm going to leave it for now. But again, I do go back. So now, looking at these sides, we're just going to do the same thing, and you can kind of see that swoop. So I'm just going to go up. And the idea is where that bump is, when we kind of use this pressure, it should just start trimming it off. That's the idea anyway. Now I don't round the corners yet. I'll usually wait. Whatever card that I size the other cards to, because you want to use one. Because once you use that one, it's like the telephone game, right? If you whisper something to somebody, they whisper it, and it goes on and on. At the end, it's distorted, right? So instead of using different cards to measure up against, you want to use one card, because then they'll be closer. So when I get tired of trimming, my hand needs a break, that's when I switch to rounding, and I'll just round the other cards, and I'll leave that one, because it just helps for measuring, for me anyway. So I'm going to continue this process, and then I will come back, and I think we'll switch to the other deck just to kind of give you an idea of how that one works. Okay, so now I'm back. I've done most of this deck, the initial cuts, so I thought it might be good to show you the difference. It's so much prettier. The art just really comes out. Now I have rounded the corners, and of course I forgot to leave one without rounded corners, but that's okay. The backs are not exactly the same, but they're close, and it's close enough for me. I'm absolutely happy with it. Now I will go through, once I finish and trim these and round the corners, I'm going to go through one more time and just kind of, you can see like some still need a little trim. Right? So I will go through and do that, and then after I do that, if I need to, I'll round the edges again. But then that'll be it. So we're almost done with this one. But thought let's go ahead and get started on the Woodland Wardens too. Oh, and this is by, because I forgot to say before, Jessica Rowe. So let's just do that first cut for this one. Now the cardstock is going to be easier to cut for sure. You know, the other deck, it's pretty thick. It doesn't look that thick, but it is. It's pretty firm. This is much thinner, much more malleable. So I think to start, I'm going to try to leave this border. I may end up cutting it later. I probably will, honestly. But for now, I'm just going to cut on the outside. Because I did kind of like it. But I may change my mind. And then if I mess up and cut into it too much, then I'll just get rid of it altogether. But for now, at least, I'm going to try to keep it. And so remember, the way I do it, this is just that initial cut. It's not the final. So I will go through and cut into it some more to make it better. Yeah, so like this one, you could see I'm leaving some white space that is going to need to go. But again, you can always cut more. You can't add it back, though. So the corner rounder will probably get rid of those. But here's the thing. I don't know. So I still have these examples, right? So this one's way too big for sure. If I do the small one, that might actually do it, honestly. I don't know how. Well, let's try it. Let's just try it. Let me cut just a teens more here. So there's a little bit of white space. And this is, can I tell you, this like kills my finger. Look at that. It's from spending a lot of time on this. Usually, when I do this, I give myself a few days. But because I'm doing the video, I'm trying to get it done faster so I can, finish the video. I feel like it's still there, or maybe that's just the... You know what? Let's go with this one because I feel like that's good. I just want to see if we use this small, how it cuts. And this may decide. Look, so there's a little bit. I don't like that. I think if I were to use the medium, it would be too much. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. All right, let's try the medium. So I'm just going to go right over. So that's pretty darn close. Yeah, so I think I'm going to start off like this. I'm going to go around and get rid of that little bit of white space. But yeah, this might actually work out nicely. So we'll see. But again, I'm not gonna force you to sit through. Not that I can force you, but as I do it. So I will continue trimming, and then I will come back and we'll continue. Okay, and I'm back again for another, I guess, check-in. So I did finish trimming this deck. It's not perfect, but I feel like it's enough. So, I mean, it's not perfectly lined up right now in my hand. But there are I mean, it's not 100%, but it's good enough. But when I say that, to me, the main thing is how it shuffles and how it feels in my hands. Because the reality is, right, you're not going to see a difference if you just lay the cards out. Like, you're just not. So as long as it shuffles comfortably, as long as it feels right in my hands, that's the main thing to me. And it does. So I don't feel any, I don't notice any difference in size or anything like that. So for me, I'm going to call this done as far as the trimming. Next, we have to edge it. And I'm almost done with this one. But I thought I should show you the difference while I have 2 cards left. So, first I'll show you the backs, just to kind of compare. Right, so I like this much better without that empty space, personally. And I love the difference without the borders. So I did end up getting rid of that outer border as well, because I cut into it. But now that I've done it, I like it much better without it. So sometimes I like to kind of let the universe decide. But look how nice this looks. So if you have this deck and you're thinking about trimming it, man, I recommend it. I mean, it depends on what you like, but look at how much nicer, again, to me, the artwork looks. Like, it just comes alive. Now, I do want to tell you, though, this is specific to this deck. Some things I've noticed, in case you do want to trim this deck. I don't know if you can see. So first of all, the first thing I noticed, because one of the things I do is, I shuffle it to see how it shuffles. And I riffle shuffled it, and I noticed that it really dings up this, you see? And I feel like when I have just a little bit that needs to be trimmed as I'm trimming, my technique is I really press hard against it, but hold it straight to try to get just that little sliver. And when I do that, it does seem to kind of peel at the backs. I don't know if you say it's not terrible. It's very slight, but I'm thinking that with riffle shuffling, it's just going to get worse. So for me, even though I do enjoy a good riffle, I'm going to overhand this deck. So be aware of that. Now, I think that you can kind of see it was happening with this without trimming it too, right? From being riffle shuffled. But I think it's going to be easier to happen if you trim it. Now, when I edge it, that's going to take care of most of that, I would say. So I think I'm probably going to try to match this green. I was thinking about going with that kind of gold color, but because of the edges, I feel like it'll look better with the green. So, yeah, so I will trim these last 2, and then we'll come back and go over edging. Now, I did save some of the edges so that I can kind of edge these first partly to see, like, especially with this one, about bleeding, and also for a color match. So, and I like to have multiples because it's hard to see the edge until you put a few together. You know what I mean? So that's why I have so many saved, But we'll come back in a little bit. Okay, so we're back again. Both decks are now totally trimmed. And I've gone ahead and picked out the colors that I'm going to use to edge them. But to show you my process, so basically I took, well, it's easier to see here. So I took some of the trimmed bits and I tested out different markers and stamps. I could not find a green to match. I tried a bunch of different greens. But then I ended up going, I'm going to use this. Now this is not yellow. It's like a goldeny brown. But I think it's going to look nice up against it. Now, this has a couple different uses. One is, to kind of test out the color, see what you think. But the other is to test out how the product goes onto the card material. How does the material respond? Does it bleed all over? What does it do? And I really was expecting this to bleed like crazy, and it didn't. I had to kind of purposefully get some color on the edges, like on, not the edges, on the side, just to see if I could wipe it away. And what I found, I lost it, was, here. So here, I purposely put that on because it didn't bleed at all. Like you can see in the other bits, like it stayed perfectly white. So I marked it on the side just to see, and then I wiped it dry, and you can see what happened. I think if I had a damp cloth, it would take care of it. But I ended up deciding not to use the marker, and instead, I'm going to use this. This is Distress Ink Fossilized Amber. This is the Holtz line. Now, normally, when I use stamps to do the edges, I'll use like this, right? And just kind of go through. But this is the first time I tried just to test the edges. What I did is I just kind of swiped them. And that actually works surprisingly well. Now this one isn't straight, so it's got, a little bit of bump. You can see, and this is a lot faster. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give this a try. I'm going to keep a damp cloth nearby just in case, and I mean barely damp, because these are very, very papery. So just the slightest bit of moisture, just in case I need to wipe. But I have a feel. Well, you want to try? I don't have. All right, we're not going to try it right now because I do not have any moisture. So I have coffee, but I don't think that would help. So for this deck, I did the same process. And originally, I was looking for different yellows to kind of match. But I really like the way this looks. I love yellow and blue together. So this is what I'm going with. Now this is a marker. This is a Crayola Super Tip. Now the thing about Crayolas is they are, I think, water-based, which means that you can wipe them away with water. So if you make a mistake, especially with lamination like this, you can, damp cloth will take it right off, or it should. I haven't tested it, but, well, here, I'll show you. But I have heard some people say that when they use Crayolas on decks, they would like wipe off. So here, let's see. So I just wrote that on there. Now that's without any moisture. Wipes away pretty well. Let's see if we can. Yeah, so it's like gone. Yeah, no, it's on my hand, but that's all right. I have not had an issue with that. I think one important thing to remember is to leave these to dry. They dry pretty quickly, but usually what I do is I just start, and I'll probably do, depends on how much space I have. Basically, I just start laying the cards out as I go, and when I run out of space, I stop, take a quick break, then I come back and I start picking them up, starting with the first ones I did. I pick up maybe half, set them aside, and then I get back to it. Once I fill up the space again, I start with that second half, and I, just kind of go like that. But then I don't shuffle the deck for usually about a day, just to be sure. It probably doesn't need that long to dry, but that's what I give it. And same thing with the stamp. That's just kind of my process for both. Yeah, so I guess I should go get a damp paper towel, and we can go through, just what it actually looks like, and then go from there. Okay, and we're back again. So now I have a few little pieces of damp paper towel. I squeezed them out really well, and as you separate them, they dry even more. So let's start with this one, because I'm really curious to see if this is going to work the way I think it will. So, and I'm not going to keep you through every card. That would be crazy. We're just going to do one or two and kind of see how it goes. So I'm just going over it. Corners are a big thing, and the thing that I've noticed about edging, whether I use a stamp or a marker, is you want to go both ways, just to totally coat it. And I go over it at least twice. So let's kind of see. So there's no bleeding, which is fabulous. And it looks like it's coated. Now, let's see here, you can see a little bit of white. The other thing that I didn't mention is after I'm satisfied, and I put these to the side, when I do that first pickup, after I've let them sit to dry, I put them all together, and then I check again and make sure there's no white. If anything needs to be redone, that's when I redo it. So I do, potentially go over them a few times. But if I need to go back over them, that does it. It's not like I have to do it a third time. So I think that's good. You want to pay special attention to the corners. They could be a little bit tricky. But I'm so happy there's no bleeding. That's fabulous. I'm so surprised. Yeah. So I'm really happy with that. Okay. So I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to set this aside. And let's do just one card from here so that you can see how it looks with the marker. Now, this one, because I'm using such a contrasting color and it's so dark, I want to be more careful. Hopefully it's not going to bleed. So I just kind of, I go by the side of it. So I'm not trying to go straight on. That would, that would be crazy. It would be too much to try to get it. So this usually is a smoother process. I don't know why. I'm like, you know what happens too is as you edge the deck with a marker, it starts to create like an indent in the marker, which is good and bad. So it's good because it makes it easier to, just glide it over. But it's bad in that over time it loses some of the ink, I think. So if that happens, you just want to turn it and use a different area. And of course, with any marker, if you set it aside for a while with the cap on, usually it comes back. So this one's doing really well too. I'm so surprised I'm not seeing any bleeding. That's fabulous. So this is like so tough on my eyes to try to focus on like such a thin line. I do not recommend doing more than one card at a time because that's when bleeding tends to happen more, unless you don't care about the bleeding. But even when you can wipe it, I think that ultimately it's going to be faster to do it like this. I'm going kind of slowly to check it as I go. But look at that. You could just kind of but yeah, I think that looks good. Okay. So now I am going to let you go while I finish edging these, and then when I'm done, I'll be back to show you. Now, if you have any questions or anything, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. I'm definitely not purporting to be any kind of expert in this. This is just my process. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, because I always forget to say that. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, or if you have suggestions, definitely let me know. And we'll be back when I'm done. And I'm back. Okay, so I finished both decks. And there are a couple things I forgot to mention. So one of the things is whether you use a stamp or a marker, you don't want to go over it too many times at the same time, because what happens is whatever you use, there's going to be moisture, and if you do it if you go over it too many times, it's going to degrade the edge of the card, unless you want that. If you're looking for like a really kind of worn look to your cards, then that's a good way to do it. But otherwise, go over it, 2, maybe 3 times, let them dry, and then go over them again. And that's what I ended up doing with both of these. So I went over them, and then I set them out to dry. And when I picked them up, I kind of put them together and checked, and decided to go over them one more time. So, and I did that with both decks. So that's probably how I normally do it. I forget. But that's how I did it with both of these. So these both have 2 total coats, and I went over the cards 2 to 3 times each. And it just depends on the look that you're going for. The other thing I wanted to point out is, so I did use these directly on the stamp. Now, I know I've tried that in the past and it bled too much. And what I realized was the stamp that I used this time is a stamp that I've used a lot, right? I use it for junk journaling and different things. So I've used it a lot. So it's not super moist. I have said that word more in this video than I think in my life. But so it's a little more dry. So I think that helped. So if you have like a brand new stamp with a ton of ink in it, you might see more bleeding. So that's the only thing to kind of bear in mind. But it just depends. But let me know what you think. I'm so glad I trimmed these. I can't even tell you. I think they're so much better in terms of the artwork. And it's so nice. And again, these weren't perfect trim jobs. But for me, it really helps me kind of build a relationship with the deck, because I take more time with the cards, and it's like I put more energy into the cards. So, I mean, you could say they're not perfectly aligned, but they're really close. I mean, it's hard to line it up against. Yeah. They're close. And for me, it's absolutely perfect. Like, I don't need them to be, that perfect, from the manufacturer kind of thing. But I think they're good. And again, as you lay them out, you're not going to notice. I mean, you're just not. The only way you would notice is if you really kind of, put them together. But in terms of shuffling, in terms of laying them out, I don't notice any difference at all. But again, if you're the type of person where it's got to be absolutely perfect, my process is probably not the one for you. And, but if you're okay with, I wouldn't even really call it an imperfection. I don't know what I'd call it. But if you're okay with things being more hand done, I think this is a great method. It takes a little longer, depending on how quick you are with scissors. But I enjoy it. I really do. And so let me know what you think. Let me know if this was helpful at all. And let me know your favorite ways to edge or to trim your decks. And until next time, just be wonderful to yourself. Be really, really wonderful, because you deserve the best, only the best, all the best. And that is my wish for you.